This is Breaking News Edition. I'm Benita Levine, live in Tel Aviv. Israel is ramping up its attacks on terror targets on two fronts at the same time, conducting simultaneous strikes in Tehran and Beirut on Tuesday. Intense strikes targeting military sites in the Iranian capital. The UN confirming damage to the Natanz fuel enrichment plant in Iran, the first such confirmation since the joint US and Israeli operations started on Saturday, with the immediate elimination of the supreme leader and more than 40 Iranian commanders. Today, Israeli troops are intensifying their push into Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah locations after the Iranian-backed terror group entered the fray by launching rockets at Israel's north. Iran, meanwhile, continues striking several Gulf nations, including Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, Bahrain and Kuwait. In recent hours, loud explosions were heard over Amman in Jordan. President Donald Trump himself expressing surprise at the way the Islamic regime has lashed out at Arab countries in the region. The U.S. State Department has ordered non-emergency personnel to leave 6 countries, including Israel, after urging Americans to leave the region immediately. Not that simple, though, given that Ben Gurion International Airport remains closed at least until next week. So for the latest, let's go live to our correspondent, Balich Sladin. He joins us now from the Alonim Junction in northern Israel. So, Balich, Hezbollah had chosen to stay out of the fray during the 12-day war in June. This time it's joining in, launching rockets at Israel's north. The IDF responding quickly. What is the latest there? What can you tell us?
Yes, it's interesting what Hezbollah has done. They have launched rockets a couple of days ago, and they said that it's in response to the killing of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. But right now, after the statement they have put out yesterday evening, they are actually saying that we are just defending ourselves because of the continuous Israeli attacks on Lebanon for the past year and a half. And they are saying that this is now is not connected actually, or has nothing to do with what is happening in Iran. We are here just defending ourselves. Just a short while ago, Mohammad Qamati, who is a politician that belongs to a party that is close to Hezbollah, has told Al Jadid network that we have said several times that our patience is running out, and here we are right now responding to the Israeli attacks. And he is also saying that they will deal with any ground operation to be taken in the south of Lebanon. We know that Defense Minister Israel Katz this morning said that he authorized the IDF with Prime Minister Netanyahu to take action and to seize more territory in the south of Lebanon. That's in addition to the 5 points where Israel is controlling actually since last year in South Lebanon. Hezbollah themselves, since this morning, they have launched at least 5 waves of rockets and drone attacks against Israeli northern territory. They have managed to hit several houses, and shrapnels did fall in some areas, but until now at least there hasn't been any announcement regarding any people that were wounded or killed as a result of that. The last wave of rockets and drones were toward the area of Haifa about an hour ago, and that of course did activate the sirens, but nothing was said by MADA, the Israeli health authorities. On the other hand, Israeli Air Force has taken different or has taken several attack waves against Hezbollah targets. The last statement has said that there were 40 targets that were hit since this morning, and just before we we're live right now, we've had the Air Force taking off just right here close to us, and of course we will hear about more and more attacks in the coming hours.
A developing situation, and obviously we will be coming back to our correspondent Balich Sladin in northern Israel for regular updates in the coming hours. For now, thank you, Balich. Now, as Iran keeps firing at Gulf states, to the surprise of many Arab nations insist their skies are secure. But how long can their defences hold? Well, our Alex Schloss takes a look in this report.
Iran's sustained missile and drone campaign against Gulf states is shifting the focus from the immediate defense of the states to long-term sustainability and to a growing debate over interceptor stockpiles. The scale of the attacks has been significant and ongoing. The United Arab Emirates Defense Ministry says the vast majority of ballistic missiles fired at the country have been intercepted, along with hundreds of Iranian drones and multiple cruise missiles. Some projectiles have landed or fallen into the sea, and debris from intercepted drones have sparked fires across the country. Emirati authorities say that the attacks have resulted in several deaths and dozens of injuries. At the same time, Gulf governments are pushing back forcefully against reports suggesting that they are running low on defensive stockpiles. Abu Dhabi says it has not and will not accept any infringement on its sovereignty and the safety of its land, and stresses that it has the strategic reserve capable of fending off aerial threats for a long time. Officials have publicly rejected claims of shortages, insisting their air defense posture remains fully prepared to confront continued attacks. In Qatar, the message is similar. Doha says there is no contact between Iran and rejects the claim that pressuring Gulf countries would lead to a return to negotiations. Qatari officials confirmed that there were attempts to assault Hamad International Airport, but they failed. Iranian jets entered Qatari airspace, were warned, and after being confirmed as heading towards Doha, were targeted, with authorities searching for their crew. The foreign ministry has also directly addressed the interceptor question, stating that its stockpile of interceptors is not depleted and that it has enough to deal with an ongoing danger. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia condemned what it described as Iran's blatant attack targeting the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh and stressed its right to take all necessary measures, including responding to the aggression. For Gulf capitals, the public line is clear. Defenses are holding, reserves are intact, and sovereignty will be protected. But behind that message lies a strategic reality. Missile defense systems depend on expensive, sophisticated interceptors that must be continuously replenished. If Iran's approach is to maintain pressure over time, the real test for the Gulf will not just be interception rates today, but whether stockpiles can sustain a prolonged war.
So for more insight into all these security developments, it's a pleasure to welcome to studio security analyst Yaakov Lapin, host of the podcast, The Lapin Assessment, and our senior correspondent, Owen Alterman. Gentlemen, thank you both so much. There is much on the go right now in Iran and in Lebanon. I want to start with you, Yaakov. These simultaneous strikes by the IDF targeting two fronts right now. Your assessment of what is going on.
Iran remains the primary arena. We're seeing most of the Israeli Air Force resources still being directed to Iran, and there are more than enough jets to deal, and drones, of course, and intelligence assets to deal with Hezbollah in Lebanon. So we are seeing a two-arena situation, but again, the majority of the strikes, the intelligence gathering, and the resources of the defense establishment are focused on Iran. And that makes perfect strategic sense because without Iran, there is no Hezbollah. So this is the opportunity. This is the money time for Israel, now that it has established aerial superiority over Iranian skies, to demolish and degrade as many capabilities and leaders and commanders that have all been working in Iran in order to try and destroy Israel. The missile program, the central trigger for this operation, as far as Israel is concerned. They had 2,500 missiles on the eve of this war, as of Friday, before this operation began. They were on their way to making 8,000 by next year. They were completely dedicated to the plan of destroying Israel. Missile program greatly set back already. We've had reports of 1,500 missiles that were supposed to be produced that are now destroyed at the factory production level. Hundreds of launchers, more than 50% of their launchers dismantled. So the missiles are a top priority. And the leadership, from Khamenei all the way down, Chief of Staff, IRGC commander, terrorists who were activating Hezbollah, this is ongoing. And so now that the Israeli Air Force, together with its U.S. partners, have established aerial superiority over Iran, this is the time to degrade the capabilities. And what's remains of the air power will be directed at Hezbollah, because there is also an opportunity here to degrade its capabilities after it fired in an unprovoked manner on Haifa 2 days ago. So this is what we're going to be seeing at least for a few days. The big question, two big questions, two things to look out for. One, what's going to happen with the 400 kilograms of enriched uranium buried at Fordow, Natanz, and probably Isfahan as well? Where's that going? Big question to look out for. And the second question is there going to be some sort of ground maneuver in Lebanon? We don't have the answer to that yet. They've reinforced in the 5 existing positions some forces. That's not a ground offensive. That's something we will find out probably soon.
A breaking news development coming in now. Western sources say Qatar carried out strikes inside Iran in the past 24 hours. There have been so many questions around possible reaction from various Gulf nations to Iran lashing out at some surprising targets. Owen, what do you make of this latest development on the diplomatic front as well? What does it look like?
Well, first of all, yeah, you're right, Benita. A report from Amit Segal from Israel's Channel 12 just in the last few minutes, a dramatic report. The idea that Qatar, if you had told any of us a week ago that Qatar would be at war with Iran and attacking Iran a few days after, let alone it downed 2 Iranian jets coming into its airspace, obviously a huge surprise of this war. Is surprising enough that the Iranians decided to attack a country like Qatar, which could have been balanced between Iran and the United States and Israel, for that matter, and could have been a kind of Iranian asset in trying to find an exit ramp. But the Iranians did not immunize the Qataris, of course, hosting that huge American Air Force base on their territory, taking on huge risks, and now taking on the price that the Iranians are now paying because of those risks and because of those potential miscalculations. Assuming this report is true, it will be interesting to see how the Iranians respond. The ball is now in their court. Do they now try to walk this back, try to climb down from the tree, try to enter into some kind of negotiations or back-channel negotiations with the Qataris, try to have some kind of reconciliation or half-reconciliation with them? We know that Qataris are fans of public apologies, for example. We saw that from our own prime minister, Benita. Could, and I'm just saying this theoretically, an apology from the Iranians, a public apology, giving the Qataris the honor and the diplomatic position and standing that's so important to them, could that solve the problem? Or do the Iranians continue to double, triple, quadruple, and quintuple down on their bet that attacking Gulf states will put pressure on the Gulf states to then put pressure on the United States and on U.S. public opinion to stop the war, again, in tandem with Iranian efforts to seal the Strait of Hormuz and choke off the supply of oil and gas?
Well, according to that thinking, there would be many apologies that Iran would need to be issuing at this juncture. But to discuss exactly that, stay with us, gentlemen. We now bring in from the United States, Saeed Golkar, UC Foundation Associate Professor of Political Science at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, joining us from Chattanooga, Tennessee. Thank you so much for your time. So many developments unfolding as we speak. I want to start with the beginning. The Iranian regime's leadership is being rapidly decimated. Day one of that joint US-Israeli operation obviously saw the supreme leader, more than 40 senior commanders eliminated at the start. Right now, strikes on Iranian regime targets continue on day 4. What are your thoughts on what this moment means for the people of Iran? Your insights?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Again, Iran is right now, the Islamic Republic, I prefer to say, is in the weakest moment of its history after the 1979. Year by year, the Islamic Republic, since the last year, after 12 days of war between Iran and Israel, started to decline rapidly, humiliated during 12 days war. And right now, in the 4 days, they have lost their supreme leader, quote unquote, and 40 other military, high-rank military commander. Iranian military have been targeted all around the countries. Iranian airspace have been dominated by the U.S. and Israeli. And there is actually the attack on even the small site, military and securities, on the police station, on the Basij and IRGC. All to all, is led to the weakest moment of the Islamic Republic in the last 47 days. Still, there are some political elite intact, like President Pezeshkian, the head of the Supreme National Security Council, Larijani, or they just created the interim leadership council invited somebody to the council, the head of judiciary, the head of the state bureaucracy, Pezeshkian, and Ayatollah Rafi. They try to replace the people who have been killed immediately, but the continuation of this conflict will lead to the more political elite to be eliminated. This is a moment, if it continues, this will be a moment that creates a political vacuum at the top. And if we continue to attack the security and military, it will provide opportunities for the Iranian people, especially when the opposition leader like Reza Pahlavi asked people to go to the street, when it's much more safer. You have to know that when Khamenei was killed, Iranians actually start to go to the street to celebrate, but at the same time, the IRGC and the security start to firing at them. Still, the regime has the grip on the power, but this grip is becoming looser and looser and looser. And this depends on how many days we are going to continue and how many of the political elite and the security forces we are going to eliminate. This will give the Iranian chance that for once and last time change the system and change the course of the Middle East and hopefully the world history, at least for the next few decades.
What do you make then of the Islamic regime's reaction in terms of Gulf nations? You talk about humiliation right now. Are they panicking? Are they desperate? What is the strategy here? They are galvanizing the Arab world, in effect, to be on the same side as Israel. Why are they doing this?
This is actually the result of being completely scared and panicking. As a result, they try to stop this war as much as they can through all of the strategy, but then war started, and in the first day of the war, they lost their leaders. Previous to the war, there was some, talk that if the leadership had been eliminated, the military is going to be as a fire on the wheel, and they are going to fire as whatever they want to do that. But what you are seeing is, in my opinion, is weakening of the chain of command of the military. And that's why they're firing in different countries, including Qatar and Oman, that these two countries for decades try to maintain the Islamic regime, try to actually balance the power between Israel and the United States and Iran. And it's very surprisingly to see even they are attacking these countries. The whole strategy right now is trying to create a mess. They play the madman, strategy, trying to put the pressure on the Arab countries in the region in hope that, they put the pressure on the President Trump and Bibi Netanyahu to stop the war. I think right now what we are seeing is a backlash, backfiring from this strategy. All of these countries come to this realization that, enough is enough. We cannot live on the fear that every few months this crazy regime is coming and attacking us. It's better to finish it. They are not sure what is coming next. But I think everybody is frustrated. If the report of the Qatari attack Iran, that will be a very interesting development. There will be some possibilities that the Pezeshkian are coming like Iraqchi. Iraqchi denied the responsibilities, said this is not our responsibilities. There are the lower rank that they are attacking these countries. But it's not going to solve the problem.
Right.
Actually create more pressure on the Islamic Republic and more consolidatory among of the Arab countries in the region.
Well, certainly the whole Middle East is watching, the whole world is watching, and we always appreciate your insight. Saeed Golkar, thank you very much for being with us. Be well.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
And many developments happening on the ground in Lebanon and in Iran. But very quickly, first, we need to check in with our correspondent, Joe Brown. He joins us from Central Israel, and another Iranian barrage targeting the center of the country just a short while ago. Several injuries. You're on the ground. What is the latest update, Joe? What can you tell us?
So what we believe with this latest barrage of missiles is that the Iranians use cluster munitions because there are several impact sites around the center of Israel, around Bnei Brak, which is where I am right now, and the surrounding areas, including Rosh Ha'ayin. But here in Bnei Brak, this is where 4 people were injured. 1 person was moderately injured. In total, there are 7. So we're going to take a walk through the site because this is incredibly interesting right now. As you can see up there, as is the case with many of these strikes, windows destroyed. There's shards of glass on the floor. There's a lot of debris. If we continue walking forward, you can see some burnt out pieces of equipment. It kind of looks like a grill over there. And all the windows seem to have been very badly damaged in this building alone. The surrounding buildings don't seem to have been as bad. But if we come over here, you can see what makes this site so special. This is Bnei Brak. It is a Haredi, an ultra-Orthodox city, also one of the densest populated cities in the world. There's around about 80,000 people per square mile here. And today is Purim, the festival in which people are dressing up and were supposed to be celebrating in the street. And if you look at the people here, this is a fairly bizarre scene. You can see children dressed up. You can see adults wearing costumes. I even saw somebody from the rescue service who is wearing a Lego rainbow shirt. So this is what was supposed to happen today. It was supposed to be a day of celebration, trying to keep in with the IDF's home front command, even though in Bnei Brak, they're not usually a stickler for the rules. So, but here in Bnei Brak, 7 people injured thus far confirmed, according to Magen David Adom. 1 of them moderately, 6 lightly with some shrapnel injuries. And this was cluster munitions. There are several different impact sites around the city.
Correspondent Joe Brown, live from Bnei Brak in central Israel. Thank you for the update. More to come from Joe, of course, in the coming hours. Senior correspondent Owen Alterman, developments as we speak. What is the latest? What can you tell us?
A huge one, Benita. The building of the Assembly of Experts in Qom, in the holy city of Qom, south of Tehran, was targeted by the Israeli Air Force. But that's not the point. The point is, inside that building were the 88 experts themselves, just about to cast their votes on who should be the next supreme leader. This is the body under Iran's constitution, the constitution of the Iran Islamic Republic, that picks the supreme leader. They were inside the building voting when it was attacked by the Israeli Air Force. An incredible, dramatic moment over the course of this war shows, again, the scope of targets that Israel's hitting in this operation, including here, the Assembly of Experts, those picking the successor to Ali Khamenei. 88 people in that building. The building, according to Iranian state media, Benita, flattened to the ground.
We're going to wait to see more details emerging from that situation. But once again, Yaakov, it speaks to the precise intelligence that Israel has on what is unfolding right now inside the Islamic Republic.
Yeah, incredible intelligence. And, I think this is a reflection of the years of investment that the IDF military intelligence and the Mossad have invested in the Iranian arena. We're seeing this investment now pay off dividends hugely. The ability to know the locations of these senior terror regime officials and their military commanders in real time. And also, it's incredible if they're still continuing to gather. I don't know if this is exactly what happened, but if they're still continuing to gather, it would suggest a dysfunctionality and lack of awareness that is almost hard to believe.
Gathering in an above-ground building, it seems.
But let's wait and see, who those people were, because I'm not sure that we know yet. But look, at the end of the day, that nowhere they go will be safe. Khamenei, in his deep bunker with his inner circle and those 40 leaders, they thought that they were safe, and they knew that there was a chance that war could break out any moment. This firepower, this intelligence means that those who are out to destroy Israel can be taken out anywhere at any time, no matter how deep they think their bunker is. And that's the core message of this war from Khamenei, Nasrallah, Mohammed Deif, Sinwar. All of these terrorist leaders who made it their life's mission to annihilate Israel have been annihilated, and there is nowhere for them in the Middle East that is out of range of Israeli and American firepower and intelligence.
And we have some questions for our Iran experts over the next few hours, Benito. What does this mean constitutionally inside Iran? If there's no assembly of experts, or no quorum at the assembly of experts at the very least, what mechanisms does the Islamic Republic have to pick another supreme leader? Can a supreme leader not be picked under the Constitution of the Islamic Republic? Will be a constitutional crisis among the many crises that this regime has. And if it can't pick a new leader, what does that mean in terms of the succession? There is this interim council. How long can it govern? How long can it establish its authority? In the time it takes to assemble the new assembly of experts under continued fire from the United States and Israel, could there then be different power centers that emerge? This has the potential, it seems to me, again, pending our questions to our Iran experts, to have a real impact on Iran and the Iranian regime's ability to function.
This is Breaking News Edition. I'm Benita Levine, live in Tel Aviv. Thank you very much for joining us. Israel is ramping up its attacks on terror targets on two fronts at the same time, conducting simultaneous strikes in Tehran and Beirut on Tuesday. Intense strikes targeting military sites in the Iranian capital. Their state TV confirming that a building in the city of Homs was targeted. It says the site had been evacuated ahead of a crucial assembly meeting, apparently to elect the next supreme leader, waiting for confirmation on that development. Now, the UN confirming damage to the Natanz fuel enrichment plant in Iran, the first such confirmation since the joint US-Israeli operation started on Saturday, with the immediate elimination of the supreme leader and more than 40 Iranian commanders. Today, Israeli troops are intensifying their push into Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah locations after the Iranian-backed terror group entered the fray by launching rockets at Israel's north. Iran, meanwhile, continues striking several Gulf nations, including Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, Bahrain, and Kuwait. In recent hours, loud explosions were heard over Amman in Jordan. President Donald Trump expressing his surprise at the way the Islamic Republic has lashed out at Arab countries. The U.S. State Department ordering non-emergency personnel to leave 6 countries, including Israel, after urging Americans to leave the region immediately. Not that simple, though, given that Ben Gurion International Airport remains closed and it's not clear when flights will be able to resume. Now, a short while ago, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visiting a base in Israel.
We continue to strike Iran with force, our pilots over the skies of Iran and Tehran, and also over the skies of Lebanon. Hezbollah made a very big mistake by attacking us. We have already responded with force and will respond with even greater force. The Lebanese government needs to understand, and the Lebanese people need to understand, that Hezbollah is dragging them into a war that is not theirs, just because of the death of that mass murderer, whom they have nothing to do with. They need to take care of themselves, and they should do so as soon as possible. We continue to do what's necessary for our defense. We are on the 4th day of Operation Roaring Lion. We are roaring, and we are acting.
So for more, it's a pleasure to welcome to studio security analyst Yaakov Lapin, host of the podcast, The Lapin Assessment, Benjamin Anthony, the CEO of the Miriam Institute, and our senior correspondent, Owen Alterman. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Yaakov, I'm going to come straight to you. So many developments right now. We're hearing the Israeli Prime Minister sounding very upbeat on day 4. Tell us more.
Well, I think he has good reason to. The Israeli Air Force has established aerial superiority over basically all of Iran at this stage. They're unable to challenge the Air Force. What that means practically and operationally is that wherever Israeli intelligence directs the Israeli Air Force to strike, those targets will be struck. Let's compare that with Iran's situation. The clear majority of the missiles that it fires at Israel are intercepted. So we're in a situation where we have one boxer in the ring, so to speak, able to land all of his blows wherever he wants, and the other barely able to land. And I'm not trivializing the danger posed by the ballistic missiles. They are still extremely dangerous, and there's no hermetic defense. But operationally, this is not even close to being an even match. The Iranians are losing core capabilities as we speak: missile production, missile launchers. Their leadership is being systematically wiped out, from Ayatollah Khamenei all the way down, IRGC commanders. Their replacements, the chiefs of staff, the assembly of experts, they are facing basically systematic elimination. And I don't know how much longer that is sustainable for this regime. It does have strategic depth. It does have operational depth. But this is a very bad situation for Iran. And the Israeli Air Force has really, together with its U.S. partners, we have to say this is a unprecedented cooperation. Never before has Israel fought a war like this with another ally, probably since 1956, the Sinai campaign. So this is all unprecedented. This is all, history. And clearly Israel and the United States have the upper hand here. And we're seeing that play out minute by minute.
It feels, Benjamin, like these leaders are falling like dominoes. And as they try to reassemble, so to speak, according to the latest reports, they're getting targeted as well. What do you make of the intelligence inside Iran, day 4?
Well, I think it's important to keep in mind that on day 1, when we took out the so-called supreme leader and the top brass of the command and control structure, we wouldn't have been able to do that if we hadn't had exceptional intelligence. Incidentally, it's probably worth examining why the head of Iranian intelligence wasn't present at that meeting. I wonder how long that individual is likely to survive. But I'm very, very pleased at the progress so far. And I would just say to the viewers, there's a lot of talk about what the long-term strategy might be, what the exit strategy might be. I remind everyone, this began on Saturday morning, as Yaakov just expressed. We had great results instantaneously and immediately. And I think that people everywhere will be looking on in wonder at how Israel and the United States have managed to do this in such great coordination. And when you see Iran lashing out everywhere and anywhere, not just towards Israel, but to other countries in the region, and you see the Europeans being dragged by the nose toward the theater, you really do have to ask a very basic question. Did we want to leave a regime intent on this degree of destruction and with this pernicious an attitude to the region and beyond, armed with the capabilities that it had and pursuing the capabilities that it wanted? And the answer, of course, is no. And so I'm very, very grateful that we're taking this in hand. I just hope it comes to a very clear conclusion.
Of course, the question remains, Owen, what this all means for the people inside the country, the Iranians facing such a major backlash, a brutal backlash in January when there was an attempt at demonstrations against the regime, and now waiting to see how things unfold. The military action laying the foundation as such before something else still needs to happen.
Right, but first, Benita, a few updates. Donald Trump meeting at this hour with Friedrich Merz, the German chancellor, and a few headlines from what he is saying. First, I was saying that Iran is running out of missile launchers. Obviously, sitting here in the Jaffa port in Israel after a number of days going in and out of our shelters, we certainly hope so. And that obviously is an important objective of this campaign, not only hitting the missiles and the missile production facilities, as important as that is for the medium and long term, also hitting those missile launchers, so important for the short term and the day-to-day management of the home front here in Israel. And of course, across the Middle East, as we've seen. So that one thing that Donald Trump is making note of. He also says he could work with those from the regime who survived the war and would be willing to enter into talks with them. Again, Donald Trump has always, Benita, being very cagey about how he sees the end game here. If the end game is, in fact, the people of Iran rising up to topple the regime, then in principle, there should be no one to speak with afterwards. But Donald Trump laying out a track for some kind of negotiations toward the end, and also hemming and hawing on the timeline here, saying that the war could be over within days on one hand, but on the other hand, saying that the United States has enough ammunition to carry out a campaign going on for weeks. So as usual, Donald Trump being cagey about the motives and the timeline, of course, the subject of much discussion in the United States. But again, Donald Trump continuing to speak there at the White House in Washington. As for the people of Iran, look, in some sense, they're a third party here. And that's the sad part. This is a war between the United States and Israel, who are going to be pursuing their interests, and the Iranian regime, which is pursuing its interests. And on our side, of course, we wish well for the Iranian people and hope that the result will be a result that serves the Iranian people. But as you can tell from what Donald Trump said, at least the way he sees it, the priority could be to speak with remnants of the regime rather than necessarily work with opposition elements to bring down the regime, a prospect that could actually bring a real horizon for the people in Iran.
We're going to take a deeper look at exactly that later on in the show. Right now, gentlemen, stay with us. We've got much more to unpack. We spoke earlier about the way Israel is targeting Tehran and Beirut at the same time. Let's find out how that's going. We go live to correspondent Balir Sladin. He joins us once again from the Alonim Junction in northern Israel. And Balir, Hezbollah had chosen to stay out of the fighting during the 12-day war back in June, but this time it's joining in, launching rockets at Israel's north, and the response has been very swift. Bring us up to speed on the latest there. What can you tell us?
Yes, rockets and also drones. In the past hour, we have seen two drone attacks, one on the upper Galilee, the other one on western Galilee. The one that was in Western Gaza did activate sirens even here where we are, and also in Haifa, Akko, and other areas, including Nahariya as well. That one was down. That the other one, the other drone in that area, is yet to understand. The IDF yet to understand what happened to it, but from what we understand, it did not fail and it did not cause any harm. The other attack happened in Upper Galilee, and we're still waiting for the result of that attack. But overall, MARA, the Israeli health authorities, did not say that anyone was hurt as a result of this. Hezbollah is also confronting the Israeli troops in the south of Lebanon. At least that's what they are claiming. They have claimed today that they have managed to attack 2 Israeli tanks. They are claiming that they have destroyed them, but that's according to their statement. This is part of their continuous, of course, campaign. And definitely the Israeli Air Force, we hear it all the time, attacking wave after wave in many areas in Lebanon. The last evacuation order was ordered in Sidon, which is a very big city in South Lebanon. And apparently the attack is going to be there as well. That's in addition, of course, to the attacks that happened in Beirut earlier today, the assassinations as well, and the green light that the IDF troops have gotten from Yisrael Katz, the defense minister, to advance into the territory of south of Lebanon.
Thank you so much. Correspondent Baligh Sladin in the Alonim Junction in northern Israel. More to come from Baligh with regular updates in the coming hours. Thank you. Now, here in Israel, several people have been injured in yet another Iranian missile barrage on central parts of the country. Red alert sirens warning people across major parts of Israel to get to shelters quickly yet again. Correspondent Joe Brown was in the city of Bnei Brak and filed this update.
Various parts of an Iranian ballistic missile have landed all throughout central Israel, in several parts here in Bnei Brak, also as far out as Rosh Ha'ayin. But here in Bnei Brak, this is where the largest impact was felt. In total, 7 people have been taken to hospital, according to Magen David Adom, 6 with light injuries, 1 moderately injured. And this is the building that faced the brunt of the damage. As you can see up there, that is where the missile landed, or part of the missile landed. There's currently workers there who are trying to make it so that it is safe for the people below, so that there isn't any more remnants that are falling down. And the same as any other impact site that we've seen over the last couple of days, windows have been shattered. There's a heap of debris on the ground here, parts of the building, shards of glass. And it's also worth noting that Bnei Brak is one of the densest populated cities, not just in Israel, but in the world. There's 86,000 people per square mile here, and it's predominantly ultra-Orthodox. And these people have been celebrating the festival of Purim today. It's a day of celebration, street parties, music, dancing, and most visibly, dressing up. And as you can see from the people who have come here to witness the scene, they are in fancy dress. It's a fairly surreal scene right now, with these people looking at the damage caused by something as severe as a ballistic missile, wearing costumes, wearing funny hats, dressed up with the intent of partying. The IDF's Homefront Command has told people that they should not be convening outside a public shelter. That hasn't stopped the people here. Bnei Brak is famous for not paying as much attention to the Homefront Command and to the government's restrictions. But the people here, as I saw when we were coming down into the street here, they have been partying, they've been enjoying themselves. Even right now, as a missile hit very close to them, they have still been dancing. There are reports that this was a cluster munition, one that separates just as it is about to be impacted, and we are waiting to hear confirmation of that. But what we do know so far is that at least 7 people have been injured, 6 lightly, 1 moderately.
Thank you so much to our correspondent, Joe Brown, with that update from the city of Bnei Brak. Yaakov Lappin.
Just want to say, listening to Joe's report, if a tourist had landed now and seen us in shelters and safe rooms in costumes, keeping up good spirits and sort of partying in the middle of missile attacks, he probably would think that he's landed in a madhouse. But I think that, this is a real sign of Israeli resilience. I think that Israeli society has proven its ability so soon after the previous escalations and over 2 years of conflict to celebrate this very important Purim and the symbolism. This isn't strictly a security comment, but it is an observation of the depth of the resilience of Israeli society. And the Israeli military officials say this is a core concept of any victory. Without a resilient society that believes in its defense establishment, that has regained the trust, that its belief and faith in the defense establishment, victory wouldn't be possible. So these scenes are actually incredible, in my view, and they are an essential part of Israel's victory, I think, going forward.
Certainly speaks to the resilience of the nation and that innate need to keep on going, keep on celebrating, even in extraordinary times. Thank you so much. Gentlemen, stay with us. We've got so much more to discuss, but I want to bring in another voice. It comes from the United States. We welcome Michael Mulroy, former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East, and he's joining us from Montana. Thank you so much for your time. There's so much to unpack right now, but I want to start with the Wall Street Journal report that Donald Trump is open to the possibility of arming anti-regime groups in Iran, also open to working with surviving members of the regime. Does that surprise you? Your thoughts?
Good to be with you and your audience. It doesn't surprise me if you look at the way Venezuela happened, not that Venezuela and Iran are very similar, but the president might be viewing the secession of power in a similar way. In other words, we took out Maduro, apprehended in that case, and then he showed a willingness to work with Delcy Rodriguez, his deputy, who was obviously part of the regime, but became very compliant to the United States, realizing that they simply could be the next on the list. I don't think that's necessarily going to work for Iran. I think there's quite a bit of zealots that are left, and they are probably potentially even more hostile to the United States than the supreme leader and the 49 individuals that were eliminated. But we'll have to see. But I think the president would view that as a potential. As far as arming an opposition, if that hasn't been planned, I don't see it working now. I don't know. I'm not in government anymore. Before working in the Pentagon, I spent a career in the Central Intelligence Agency. So I'm very familiar how these could work, but it's generally not something that can just be spontaneously developed. So again, I don't know, maybe perhaps this has been planned, but right now there doesn't seem to be an armed opposition that can really challenge the remnants of the regime.
Well, given your experience in the intelligence world then, these precise, stunning operations starting on day one, eliminating the supreme leader and more than 40 Iranian commanders. And now, just a short while ago, reports that there was yet another meeting ostensibly to elect a new supreme leader. That building was targeted as well. Give us a sense of how long it has taken for both America and Israel together to work on these operations unfolding right now.
Yes, from a tactical and operational perspective, this was astounding. I think it's the most significant decapitation strike that I can think of ever. And hats off to Mossad and the CIA for getting this done. Essentially, from what we're seeing in reports, I don't know, of course, but we're seeing reports, they knew exactly where Khomeini was almost at any given time. And they waited until he had, I think, very sloppily organized a meeting during the day with many individuals. And according to the New York Times and ABC, that is when that triggered this entire thing, because they couldn't pass up that opportunity. And like you said today, they might have struck the very location where they were meeting to choose another supreme leader. They obviously are completely infiltrated, and that's got to really shake them to their core. So again, an excellent start for this conflict operationally. The question is, what is the ultimate end state that we're driving toward, the United States? And how can we get this back on the diplomatic path? Because the longer this goes on, the more difficult it's going to be for our key partners, speaking from the United States perspective, Israel, obviously, but also all our Gulf partners, to defend themselves. These interceptor missiles are very much in short supply right now. And once they run out, I'm not saying they will, but if they run out, I should say, that is going to cause a huge problem for all these Gulf states, which are already taking direct attacks into their civilian population.
Raising many concerns, of course, especially when the president has said that this could continue for several more weeks. Michael Malroy, former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East, live from Montana. Thank you, as always, for being with us on I-24 News, Breaking News Edition. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
So for more reaction on exactly that, Benjamin Anthony, what do you make of the Wall Street Journal and the apparent plans that Donald Trump has in terms of the day after as such for Iran? What does it look like? Your thoughts?
Well, firstly, if you analyze the way that President Trump speaks, he regularly and often says, I'm open to it, I'll think about it, I'll let you know in 2 weeks, we'll talk about it, I'm happy to talk to anyone. I think this is a continuation of that mode. But if you look at it as a serious proposal, I want to say I don't like it. I don't like this idea at all.
Why not?
Because I think it's an appallingly flawed notion, and we've seen it in Gaza. I'll give you an example. Inside the Gaza Strip, we've heard this ridiculous nonsense of a so-called reformed PA somehow coming in, despite the fact that it was routed, thrown off rooftops, shot in the back of the head, and dismissed and expelled from the Gaza Strip by Hamas when they first came to power, is somehow going to be ready, willing, and able to effectively take over the Gaza Strip. That's a reformed PA, in parentheses. Then we heard about the idea that some of the Hamas members might be able to take part in ruling the Gaza Strip once Hamas disarms. This is complete, total, and utter nonsense. And I think that to take that on a micro scale and then overlay it on a macro scale onto Iran means that we're not going to see the long-term change that all of this is in pursuit of bringing about. We're not in the business in Israel. We don't have the luxury of seeking to ensure a great destiny for the Iranian people, much as some people might like that to be the case. What we need to do is get rid of the threats. They're threefold. It's the ballistic missiles, it is the array of terror proxies that are right on our borders who have joined this fray as well. Again, I'm referring to Hezbollah. And, of course, we want to bring about an end to the nuclear weapons pursuit of the Iranians. Now, anything in addition to that is absolutely fine. We can look at that, but let's get the basics out of the way first of all. And I don't think included in any diplomatic outcome should be handing over the reins of power and leadership to people who were sympathetic to a regime that has immiserated our lives since it came about. And I also want to say on a personal note, not in my name, but much more in the name of the soldiers I had the privilege of serving alongside, as any combat veteran in this country can tell you. I have served in the wars of 2006, Southern Lebanon, 2012, 2014, this war inside the Gaza Strip. All of this came from this regime, in part, in Iran. Clear it out, clear house, and stop talking nonsense about the reforming of these religious jihadist fanatics. I hope I'm getting my points across.
Say it a little bit more clearly, please, I insist.
Next time.
Oh, and your thoughts?
A couple updates, first of all. First of all, a quick correction. I had mentioned that Donald Trump's comments that we talked about earlier about ammunition, about missile launchers, and all the rest were from comments with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. They haven't actually met yet. It was actually from a 4-minute telephone interview with Politico. Again, part of Donald Trump's round of these telephone interviews that he's doing with outlets, whether they be television outlets or print outlets, digital ones in the United States. Second, in terms of Qatar, Benita, we discussed in our last bulletin that there had been the reporting here in Israel, including confirmation from senior Israeli officials, that the Qataris had attacked in Iran. The Qataris have come out with their own statement. I'm going to try to read the exact words. Qatar has not been part of the campaign targeting Iran. Has not been part. Present perfect. We are exercising our right to self-defense and deterring Iranian attacks against our country. We urge media outlets to use credible Qatari sources when reporting on Qatar. Benita, there is a civil war in Israeli media right now about whether Qatar is denying the claim that it attacked Iran or confirming the claim that it attacked Iran. In any case, they have not been part of the campaign, but in principle, to split the hairs here, might have done something independent of the campaign to exercise their right of self-defense. At any rate, getting into the Talmudic debate, the Qataris wanting to be cagey on this, I think, Benita, what they ultimately want to do is reclaim the position they've historically had and built for themselves and carved out for themselves in the Middle East of being a go-between between the two different sides, while at the same time signaling to Iran they're not happy at all about being attacked.
30 seconds till the break. Yaakov Lapin, your thoughts?
It sounds like the Qataris are saying to the Iranians, look, you shouldn't have attacked us. We had nothing to do with the attack on you. But now that you did, we're going to reserve our rights of self-defense and strike you back. That's my reading of their statement. And look, regarding what Benjamin said, first of all, I totally agree that Israel's priority is to eliminate those three existential threats. But we also have to think, what's the end goal? We want the regime to fall. That's the solution. But we don't have right now the tools to enact that. Certainly Israel doesn't. And I don't know if the United States does either. There is no coherency in getting talks back up with this regime. What is the point of doing that? That's completely contradictory to everything that's been going on here.
Ahead of these developments, President Donald Trump did say help was on the way. The question remains whether the United States needs to follow up on what that help looks like down the line, something we will discuss in a short while. But right now, we're going out for a very short break. Welcome back to this breaking news edition. I'm Benita Levine. Thank you very much for staying with us. Israel ramping up its attacks on terror targets on two fronts at the same time, conducting simultaneous strikes in Tehran and Beirut on Tuesday. Intense strikes targeting military sites in the Iranian capital, including a building in Qom, as Iranian clerics were gathering to elect new supreme leadership. We wait to see how that all unfolds. The UN confirming, though, damage to the Natanz fuel enrichment plant in Iran, the first such confirmation since the joint US-Israeli operation started on Saturday, with the immediate elimination of the supreme leader and more than 40 Iranian commanders. Today, Israeli troops are intensifying their push into Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah locations after the Iranian-backed terror group entered the fray by launching rockets at Israel's north. Iran, meanwhile, continues striking several Gulf nations, including Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, Bahrain, and Kuwait. In recent hours, loud explosions were heard over Amman in Jordan. President Donald Trump expressing his surprise at the way the Islamic regime has lashed out at Arab countries. So for the latest, let's go live to our senior U.S. correspondent, Mike Wagenheim. He joins us from the White House in Washington. So much to discuss, Mike. Such a lot of reaction to all the developments right now. We know the U.S. State Department has ordered non-emergency personnel to leave 6 countries, including Israel, after urging Americans to leave the region immediately. It speaks volumes. Tell us more.
It speaks volumes. Unfortunately, maybe not volumes in the way the State Department wants it to at the moment. There's a lot of criticism revolving around some of the messaging and some of the timeline of the decision making that's being done by the administration right now. When you speak to the evacuations, some other countries either made these plans well in advance of the attack, or at least the bulk of them coming from the Americans and Israelis, or if they had to make them afterward, like the British, they're offering emergency flights out. The government of the UK is sending planes over to places like Oman and elsewhere around the region to get their citizens out. The American side saying, we strongly suggest you get out on commercial travel. There is no commercial travel out of a lot of those countries right now, and what little there is not going to be enough to get American citizens out, and really nothing else is being offered right now. By the way, Egypt is curiously on that list of countries that the U.S. is saying its citizens should evacuate from. Unclear why, as Egypt is not involved in this and doesn't appear to be getting involved in this, but we'll keep our eye on that. In terms of the messaging itself around the war, that's also a cause for concern, because it really depends on who you speak with at any given moment in the administration, what the rationale is for going to war with Iran to begin with. Steve Witkoff says he was told flat out by the Iranians that they were weeks away from having up to 11 nuclear bombs at their disposal. Other officials say, well, it was we'll classify it as an imminent threat, but it wasn't anything immediate. We just knew that if we let this go, in a year's time, a year and a half, they would have what they needed to really do damage. Meanwhile, Marco Rubio, and possibly the most damaging comment for Israel yesterday, said that the Israelis were planning an attack, and the Americans felt that if they didn't preemptively strike Iran, that the Americans would be hit as a result of Israel's strike on Iran, which puts Israel in a really tough spot right now. And Israel supporters here at home essentially being used as fodder by Israel critics to say that Jerusalem is controlling Washington's foreign policy. So a real messaging issue right now. What we haven't heard a lot of, Benita, is from President Trump himself. He's spoken with outlets here and there for 5-10 minutes at a time on the phone, but really has very little to say to the press beyond some pre-recorded statements. He's about to have a meeting. Actually, it's going on right now with the Chancellor of Germany, Friedrich Merz. The press pool is supposed to enter the Oval Office soon, and hopefully we'll ask some questions about this situation and can get some more detailed answers than the administration has been giving as of late.
Thank you so much. That's our senior U.S. correspondent, Mike Wagenheim, live from the White House. More to come from Mike, of course, in the coming hours. Thank you. Benjamin Anthony, your thoughts on these mixed messages? We were talking about it a little bit earlier on in the show, but right now, as Mike was talking about the Marco Rubio factor, he certainly put a spanner in the works with some of his comments about why this operation happened when it did. In effect, what prompted the U.S. president to act. Your thoughts?
Well, I think Secretary Rubio's comments were unfortunate. I think he's a great friend of Israel. I think he's a wonderful and effective Secretary of State, but this was a bit of a faux pas, throwing red meat to the Tucker Carlsons and to the Megyn Kellys and the others in that space. But look, the mixed messaging, Benita, is something that President Trump has said repeatedly he believes in. He has actually criticized heavily, and in my opinion, rightly, American presidents prior to him who have come out and telegraphed very, very clearly what it is they're going to do, what it is they're not going to do, how long it's going to take, what will be the nature of the strike. And I don't see any reason that in a hot war, an American president or any administration should have to tell its enemy precisely that which it intends to do. You know, we bemoan this in the IDF. How often do you hear us talk about us surrendering the element of surprise because of our natural humanity towards civilians in an area we're going to kinetically strike, warning them ahead of time? And I'll give you just one example from the past. You might recall, and the viewers might recall, Secretary of State John Kerry with regard to Syria and their famous red line that then turned pink and was completely erased by President Barack Obama, talking about a pinpoint strike that they're going to carry out against Assad's regime there inside Syria. It turned out to be nonsense. It turned out to be nothing. It was an inaccurate statement at its core. And I think that it's important to note that the people who need to get the messaging right are those who are collaborating over the field of fire. That's the Americans and that's the Israelis. They are uniquely coordinated. What is thrown out as fodder for the general public, to me, is far less important. But I do go back to Secretary Rubio's statement, again, emphasizing he's a great friend of Israel. That was a misstep, but it happens even to the best.
Benjamin, I think you're right. As long as Trump has enough trust and enough political capital and enough runway politically to conduct the war. And I think you're right. In the short term, he has that, even given where the polls are in the United States. But as the war continues, especially if there are casualties, especially if there are setbacks that are evident to the public, there's going to be more and more pressure on him and more good reason for him to be more precise. On the other hand, at that stage, he'll have more information about how the war is going and will be able to narrow his options in a more intelligent way.
Yaakov.
Yeah, just to quickly point out, I don't think there's actually anything wrong with what Secretary Rubio said. I understand that the optics of it don't look good to the anti-Semitic far right, which wants to accuse Israel of every ill in the world. But what did he actually say? He said that as far as Israel is concerned, the missile program became an existential threat, that Israel had already decided that it was on its way to strike, which is absolutely the right thing for Israel to do, and that this obviously carried great weight in the decision-making process. It clearly wasn't the only factor, but it was a very important factor in the decision-making process. In fact, we didn't know about this in the lead-up. This was obviously shrouded, and the number of Iranian missiles that were basically in their arsenal only became declassified a couple of days ago, actually, in response to one of my questions to the military. So at the end of the day, all he said was that Israel was on its way to acting to remove an existential threat, and the United States, for many good reasons, decided to join it. There were the negotiations were going nowhere. The U.S. understands that Iran is a huge threat to itself. So if you take away this, hostile, far-right, whatever you want to call it, distortive messaging, which is always going to frame Israel as wrong and evil, etc., he didn't say anything particularly terrible.
I don't think what the Secretary said was terrible, and I agree with that point. But it goes somewhere between Owen's and Yaakov's points here. It's not just the far right, those who I mentioned, such as Tucker Carlson and others of that ilk. It's also the base. The base, the MAGA base, does not want America dragged into foreign wars at the behest of another country. Now, Yaakov is correct that the idea that America gets on board with Israel's intentions is positive for us, but it's going to be reviled among a segment of the base, not just the furthest fringes of that base. And so for that reason, what I would say about Secretary Rubio's statements is that it was just simply unnecessary. And if you go back to when he was contending for the nomination for the presidency, he is someone who's very, very eloquent when on script. Off script, he does have a little bit of a habit of making rhetorical faux pas. But as I said, it happens to the best of us. And I think that we will leave that in the background when it comes to the headlines soon enough. Just one last point that Owen mentioned. Owen, I totally agree with you, but I think it's very, very early days to worry about what will go on. I just want our audience, Benita, to keep in mind, it's a big headline. Everybody's concerned about Iran, of course, and the strikes against it and what's the end game. But we are so early in this campaign. To me, it's impossible to suggest what might be the outcome. But the mission set has been defined.
Yeah, no, just a very quick point. I agree with everything you said about Rubio. There's an easy answer for Israel and the pro-Israel community in the United States. It would have been Iran's fault. There is no basis for Iran to start attacking American troops after an Israeli attack, just as there's no basis for Iran to start willy-nilly attacking Gulf states after what the United States and Israel have done. And that should be the answer. It was Iran's fault, even if this Marco Rubio story is true. It is Iran's fault that the United States was put in that place, not Israel's.
Also, President Donald Trump clearly makes decisions that he is happy with, and it's very difficult to process that he was persuaded to do something that he didn't want to do or wasn't on board with. But again, the conversation will continue. Gentlemen, thank you so much, because we turn our focus now to another development as Iran keeps firing at Gulf states to the surprise of many, as we've discussed. Many Arab nations insist their skies are secure, but how long can their defenses hold? Our Alex Schloss reports.
Iran's sustained missile and drone campaign against Gulf states is shifting the focus from the immediate defense of the states to long-term sustainability and to a growing debate over interceptor stockpiles. The scale of the attacks has been significant and ongoing. The United Arab Emirates Defense Ministry says the vast majority of ballistic missiles fired at the country have been intercepted, along with hundreds of Iranian drones and multiple cruise missiles. Some projectiles have landed or fallen into the sea, and debris from intercepted drones have sparked fires across the country. Emirati authorities say that the attacks have resulted in several deaths and dozens of injuries. At the same time, Gulf governments are pushing back forcefully against reports suggesting that they are running low on defensive stockpiles. Abu Dhabi says it has not and will not accept any infringement on its sovereignty and the safety of its land, and stresses that it has the strategic reserve capable of fending off aerial threats for a long time. Officials have publicly rejected claims of shortages, insisting their air defense posture remains fully prepared to confront continued attacks. In Qatar, the message is similar. Doha says there is no contact between Iran and rejects the claim that pressuring Gulf countries would lead to a return to negotiations. Qatari officials confirmed that there were attempts to assault Hamad International Airport, but they failed. Iranian jets entered Qatari airspace, were warned, and after being confirmed as heading towards Doha, were targeted, with authorities searching for their crew. The Foreign Ministry has also directly addressed the interceptor question, stating that its stockpile of interceptors is not depleted and that it has enough to deal with an ongoing danger. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia condemned what it described as Iran's blatant attack targeting the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh, and stressed its right to take all necessary measures, including responding to the aggression. For Gulf capitals, the public line is clear. Defenses are holding, reserves are intact, and sovereignty will be protected. But behind that message lies a strategic reality. Missile defense systems depend on expensive, sophisticated interceptors that must be continuously replenished. If Iran's approach is to maintain pressure over time, the real test for the Gulf will not just be interception rates today, but whether stockpiles can sustain a prolonged war.
So for more, it's a pleasure to welcome Dalia Ziad, a Middle East scholar at the Washington Coordinator Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy. Many are shocked at the Islamic Republic's repeated moves in the last 4 days to target Arab countries. Even President Donald Trump saying it's the biggest surprise of the war so far. So many people asking why. What do you make of this strategy? Is it desperation? Is it panic? Is it foolish? What are your thoughts, Dalia?
Thank you so much, Benita. Pleasure to be with you. So from the Arab perspective, of course, there is a very strong feeling of relief, first of all, that the Iranian regime is collapsing and this dynamic of Sunni-Shia conflict may come to an end very soon. So there is a relief from this side, but there is also a strong sense of fear and disbelief of what Iran is doing. Fear, and the fear is not only coming from uncertainty, but the fear is coming from the fact that Iran is trying to move the center of the conflict from Tehran to Arab Gulf states. And if you look at the Arab Gulf region, the Arabian Peninsula in particular, it has been kind of immune or unshaken by all the transitions, political and military and security turmoils that happened in the region over the past 3 or 4 decades, including even during the Arab Spring and in the aftermath of the Arab Spring. It remained intact, it remained stable in comparison to the rest of the Arab countries. So being the center of the attack right now is really shocking to many Arab Gulf countries. If we look at it from the Iranian perspective, actually Iranians are just doing what they have always used to do, which is treating Arab countries as their backyard, as a place where they can plant militia, where they can fire rockets, where they can even involve in political activities inside these countries to sabotage the political system in these countries without Arab countries necessarily complaining about it. For Iran's shock, this time the targeted Arab countries, which are the Arab Gulf countries, are much stronger than expected. Think about it. Most of these Arab countries, Arab Gulf countries, did not have a strong military, did not have even a military at all 15 years ago. Now they have strong defense systems that they can really defend themselves against Iran. And even now, just a few minutes ago, we started to see reports that Qatar, the first Arab Gulf country in this case, to attack Iran in retaliation to the strikes that Qatar received in the past few hours. So it's a very interesting situation.
And Dalia, to that exact point, as we are talking right now, we are getting reports of loud explosions in Doha and Dubai, Abu Dhabi, all of this unfolding right now. It seems relentless, and one wonders, what is the realistic, likely response from these nations to this aggression out of Iran right now, out of the Islamic Republic?
The good news is that, unfortunately, Iran's aggression, as strong as it is, but the good news is that it's bringing the Arab Gulf countries together. It's actually allowing them for the first time in many years to get over their tribal conflicts and think as a collective. What we are seeing, which is also really, really interesting, is that Iran is, of course, trying its best to widen the scope of the conflict and making it more costly to the United States and its allies, either by targeting Arab Gulf states who are strong allies to the U.S. administration, and also where the U.S. administration is doing a lot of investments, political and financial, and also trying to target gas and oil facilities in order to disturb the international economic system. But what's happening here is that Arab Gulf countries, for the first time, are coming together, taking the side of Israel and the United States, which is, by the way, a game changer. I mean, a few weeks ago, we were complaining about Saudi Arabia going back to anti-Semitic rhetoric. However, what really concerns me is the position of the countries on the western side of the Red Sea, who think that they are immune, including my home country, Egypt. Egypt is publicly not taking clear positions either in the side of the US and Israel or the side of Iran. But if you follow the Egyptian media, they are typically mirroring the Turkish position, which is supporting Iran and under the claim that if we let Iran fall, this will empower Israel. And as you know, Israel for Egypt is still considered a historic enemy and an eternal enemy, as they say, unfortunately. So this is really what concerns me, which is Egypt's position, because Egypt have the strongest military so far in the Arab world or in the Arab countries, and it's the direct neighbor of Israel.
So many changing dynamics across the Middle East right now and so many active developments as we speak. We always appreciate your insights. Dalia Ziada, thank you so much for being with us on this Breaking News edition. Thank you, Dalia. Be safe.
Thank you.
And now, Dalia was talking about the cost of an escalation like this. Let's take a deeper look at the markets. 4 days into this escalation across the region, we now welcome Julien Metonier, oil markets economist at Energy Intelligence, joining us now from Revel in France. Julien, thank you so much for your time. Oil prices pushed higher, stocks falling sharply, and it's just the early days. Talk to us about the prospect of a drawn-out conflict. What does it mean for the oil markets? Your concerns, your thoughts right now?
Good evening, Benita. Yes, Brent oil prices, the main benchmark, are up 11% so far to about $80 per barrel. So they gained $5 on Monday and again $5 today before subsiding by about $2. Now, if you're surprised that prices did not go up more and quicker, remember that part of the risk premium was already embedded in the crude oil tanker rates. And that's an important point because those freight rates were the main price shock absorber, which is why, by the way, we didn't see a bigger jump in crude prices. Instead of flat prices, it was freight rates that increased. And the problem now is that as a result of this war, traffic through the Strait of Hormuz has slowed to a near halt. And as a result, we see crude prices potentially spiking now. Forget about the shock absorber of freight rates. It could potentially, the oil prices could potentially spike to $100 per barrel. I wouldn't make a call to, higher number right now because it's probably too early. And every time we've tried to do that, we've been wrong. But, if supply disruption, which appear much more likely, effectively materializes, then, we'll see higher prices for sure.
And when you talk about the IRGC vowing to close the Strait of Hormuz, threatening, of course, to set alight any vessels as well that pass through, choking off the world's most vital oil export route, talk to us about the long-term devastation, what this means across the board right now.
Yes, well, the market right now wants to see evidence that Hormuz can get moving again, including, all the insurance, naval escorts options. Right now, the war risk coverage has been canceled for tankers transiting through Hormuz, and tanker rates, as a result, could shoot up by maybe 50% in the coming days. They're basically surging. For us at Energy Intelligence, the most likely scenario right now is that the US and Israel will continue to degrade Iran's military capabilities, while Iran will continue to retaliate against maybe US bases in the Gulf, Israel, neighboring Gulf states, and other military and energy assets in the periphery. So now you've got basically 150-ish tankers waiting around the Gulf, plus several major oil exporters stuck back inside. I mean Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, right, plus partially the Saudis and the UAE, together with Iran. That's now about 20% of your global oil supply on pause.
Certainly very worrying indeed. Julien Metonier from France, thank you so much. We need to leave it there because we're going to the White House. President Donald Trump is hosting the German Chancellor.
We've had a very, very powerful impact because virtually everything they have has been knocked out now. Their missile count is going way down. Amazingly, they're hitting countries that were, let's call them neutral, right? They lived together for a long time. I think they were surprised. I was surprised. I think and now those countries are all fighting against them and fighting strongly against them. Someday they'll write a story and they'll say why they did that. But they hit countries that had nothing to do with what's going on. They were sort of leaving everything alone. All of a sudden they had missiles shot in, which shows you the level of evil that we're dealing with. They'll hit people that were actually at least somewhat friendly, and they had no problems with it. Also hitting only civilian places, hotels and apartment buildings, and we're hitting them where it is much more appropriate. We're hitting them very hard. And the big scale hitting goes now. They no longer have air protection. They no longer have any detection facilities at all left. And so they're gonna be in for a lot of hurt. These are bad people. These are people that killed. I guess it's 35,000. It's coming out 35,000 over the last 3 weeks. Protesters, 35,000 violently killed. So these are bad people, and the leader of the pack is gone. And as you know, 49 people were taken out in the first hit, and I guess there was another hit today on the new leadership, and it looks like that was pretty substantial also. So they're getting hit very hard, and we'll see what happens. A lot of people are coming forward. A lot of the people you would least suspect want to quit. They want to have immunity. They're asking for immunity, and probably at some point they'll be dropping, as you would say, laying down their guns. We'll see what happens. In the meantime, we're just continuing to go forward. Our military is the number one in the world by far, and we are. Everything's big in my book. Venezuela was big. This is big. The original hit, Midnight Hammer, was big. Everything you view is big, but it's not considered very big by some standards, by some of our standards. We have a military like no other military that's ever been built.
Everything's big. President Donald Trump at the White House there. And with that, we wrap up this breaking news edition. Thank you once again to our esteemed panel. You can, of course, follow us for more on social media and check out our live English broadcast lineup for this week. It's on your screen. Back in a bit. Stay tuned. This is Breaking News Edition. I'm Benita Levine, live in Tel Aviv. Thank you very much for joining us. Israel is ramping up its attacks on terror targets on two fronts at the same time, conducting simultaneous strikes in Tehran and Beirut on Tuesday. Intense strikes targeting military sites in the Iranian capital, also targeting a crucial assembly meeting apparently where clerics had met to elect the next supreme leader. The UN confirming damage to the Natanz fuel enrichment plant in Iran, the first such confirmation since the joint US-Israeli operation started on Saturday, with the immediate elimination of the supreme leader and more than 40 Iranian commanders. And you'll be able to hear that our phones are going off. Red alert sirens are sounding right now.
Trump was asked directly whether he essentially supported the comments made by Secretary of State / National Security Advisor Marco Rubio yesterday, in which Rubio appeared to indicate that an imminent attack by Israel essentially forced America's hand to attack Iran. The rationale by Secretary Rubio yesterday was that Israel was preparing an imminent attack on the Iranians, that the Americans, as a result of that, expected retaliation by Tehran against American interests, since the U.S. and Israel are so tightly allied, and therefore the thought process by Washington was they needed to attack Iran first before Iran had a chance to attack American interests in the region. Those comments caused some level of controversy, I would say, at a minimum. Meanwhile, President Trump indicating today that, in fact, he thought it was the other way around, that the U.S. forced Israel's hand into action by attacking Iran first. So President Trump, at least coming to the bat of Jerusalem in this particular moment at the White House, whether it's enough to mitigate the damage done by the comments yesterday remains to be seen. But President Trump indicating that it was America's decision in the end, and it wasn't anything that Israel did that forced America's hand, rather vice versa. Just a few moments ago, getting word from the U.S. State Department, an official saying that nearly 500 American citizens so far have been helped by the State Department to evacuate out of Israel. The official saying hundreds of American citizens have left Israel since the start of the conflict, and over the last few days, the State Department has assisted over 130 American citizens depart from Israel. An additional 100 American citizens are expected to depart today. The State Department has come under fire somewhat for what seemingly is not a coherent plan per se to get American citizens out of the region. Some critics say the State Department let the plan essentially go unorganized, I would say, over the last few days. We're going to head back to the studio now. Our crew has come out of the shelter and now back in the studio in Jaffa. We'll send it back to you guys.
Thank you so much to our Mike Wagenheim taking over the broadcast just for a few moments so that we could get to the shelters. Once again, as you heard just moments into the start of this broadcast, red alert sirens sounding, and everybody who had heard those alerts, who had received alerts on their phone, getting to safety as soon as possible. What was slightly different from the usual situation is there was no alert ahead of the siren, and that is because it appears this barrage came from Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. That is something new to discuss it all as it unfolds. Security analyst Yaakov Lapin, host of the podcast, The Lapin Assessment, and our senior Middle East correspondent, Ariel Osseran. Thank you so much. A dramatic start to our broadcast, but it's very clear that this is an attack out of Hezbollah, and that is highly unusual, those sirens sounding here in Tel Aviv.
Hezbollah is starting to deploy its heavier firepower. This is a long-range rocket. This is the first time that it has fired on central Israel in a very long time. And this is a response to the escalation in Lebanon, which it itself triggered. Let's remind everybody that 2 days ago, Hezbollah stepped into this war with Iran, clearly under Iranian pressure, under Iranian orders, after the elimination of Ali Khamenei, fired a relatively small rocket volley at Haifa. And Israel has said it doesn't matter if it's small or big. Anybody who fires on a city is going to hear from the IDF. And since then, we have seen hundreds of strikes and eliminations in Lebanon and southern villages. Over 100 of them already have been called on to evacuate. And in this context, Hezbollah itself is escalating its firepower. It does have rockets that can reach central Israel. It has fired them. The IDF has confirmed that these are rockets fired from Lebanon. It said the majority of them had been intercepted, and a few fell in an open area. There's another thing that's really relevant here because we cannot divorce the Lebanese and the Iranian arenas. They are interlinked. Iran is the mothership, so to speak. Hezbollah is the tentacle. And just a few hours ago, the IDF announced very dramatic elimination. It's not as dramatic as Khamenei or the commander of the IRGC, but very painful elimination for Hezbollah. And we're talking about the Iran Quds Force Lebanon Corps commander. His name is Ali Zadeh. He was eliminated by the Israeli Air Force in Tehran, in the Iranian capital. And he was responsible for basically supporting Hezbollah with strategic weapons. His predecessor had been eliminated before. This is the kind of disruption that will prevent for a while Iran from being able to actively support its Lebanese proxy, Hezbollah. So this is all tied together. You're seeing the IDF go after very strategically Iran, its ability to support Hezbollah in Lebanon. And this is the two-arena dynamic that we're seeing, and projectiles coming in from both arenas, targeting central Israel in a single day from Iran and from Lebanon.
Well, we certainly will discuss more on this very front, and specifically what kind of defense systems would have intercepted those rockets launched from southern Lebanon, not to mention earlier barrages in the day out of Iran as well. We'll discuss that more in a moment. Gentlemen, stay with me right now. Let's check in to the latest developments on the ground. We go live to correspondent Malik Stadin. He joins us from Alonim Junction in northern Israel. Red alert sirens across the center, red alert sirens across the north. Bring us up to speed, Malik. What did you hear? What did you see? Tell us more.
Yes, just a short while ago in the Western Galilee and later also in the center Israel, Ramat Gan and also Tel Aviv, sirens activated without a warning. And then immediately it appeared to be from Lebanon, actually, and not from Iran. And as a result of that, the sirens went off. According to the IDF, a number of missiles were launched from Lebanon towards central Israel, and the Israeli Air Force tried to intercept those missiles, and they fell in open area. They did not cause any harm or any damage. Now, this is the first time actually that Hezbollah does fire this kind of missiles that can reach actually central Israel. We have seen Hezbollah doing this in the time of the war between Israel and Hezbollah a year and a half ago. But this is the first time during this war that they are doing this. Probably they have managed to do that from the north of Lebanon, not from south of the Litani River, but this is something that hasn't been determined yet. Now, according to what we are getting from Lebanon as well, the reports there that El Jama'a al-Islamiyya compound in Tzidon, which is the south of Lebanon, a big city there. This is after evacuation order from the IDF, and I'm talking here about Tyre, of course, in English. They are saying that their compound has been struck by the Israeli Air Force and completely destroyed. So we're seeing that Israel is continuing with its efforts. And just a short while ago, the Chief of Staff, Eyal Zamir, did talk about this. He said that Hezbollah wants to engage with this war. And the objective, according to Eyal Zamir, that the IDF will not stop until Hezbollah is fully disarmed. So this is a very huge statement, of course. Now, the objective in Israel is that Hezbollah will or should disarm. Until then, Israel will continue this war against Hezbollah in Lebanon.
Correspondent Balir Sladin in northern Israel will be coming back to you for more updates in the coming hours. For now, stay safe. Thank you so much. Now back to studio. Security analyst Yaakov Lapin, as well as our senior Middle East correspondent, Ariel Oseran, and joining us as well, senior correspondent, Owen Alterman. So, Ariel, I want to come to you because Hezbollah chose to stay out of the fray during the 12-day war between the US and Iran and Israel, and now they're choosing to get involved, and we're seeing the fruits of those efforts just moments ago. Bring us up to speed on the thinking out of the terror group right now. Why now?
Yeah, I don't think they have much of a choice. I think they've been coerced by their leadership in Iran to join the fray as to make good on their purpose for existence, and that is being the insurance policy for Iran. The thinking that if you look at the opening blow of this operation back on Saturday, you had 200 Israeli fighter jets and 250 American fighter jets. And so that is the scenario, the doomsday scenario for the Islamic Republic. That's why they had these proxies, in order to distract Israeli forces, to spread them across numerous arenas so they wouldn't be able to employ a concerted effort on Iran. Now, Hezbollah was tardy to the party, as you can say. They were a little late, missing that initial blow that led to the elimination of the senior leadership of Iran, including the supreme leader. But now they really have no choice, and they are going to join this campaign in an attempt to redirect some of Israel's military capacity, so that not all of it is concerted on Iran. And so we are seeing here now, with this escalation of launching long-range rockets at central Israel, earlier today also launching an anti-tank missile at Israeli forces in southern Lebanon. The missile missed, hit an open area, so there were no injuries, but we are seeing definitely Hezbollah raising the ante, escalating the situation in an attempt to try and spread or split the attention of the IDF, that it won't be solely focused on Iran, but that it will have to also direct capabilities towards Lebanon, as to diminish or reduce the impact and the devastation that the IDF is currently having on Iran right now.
If you're just joining us now, the IDF confirming Hezbollah launched 3 rockets at Tel Aviv and Haifa. No injuries reported at this point. Those rockets also are the first long-range Hezbollah attack amid the current conflict, as Ariel is outlining. 2 of them were intercepted by air defenses, while 1 hit an open area. And obviously a developing situation. We'll continue to bring you updates on that front. Yaakov Lapin, give us a sense of what that means for communities up north who have been waiting for so long to resume some kind of normal activity and routine and go back to their normal lives as of before the 7th of October, waiting for some kind of routine, for want of a better way of putting it, what this kind of potential escalation means for people living up there right now.
Of course, it's not an easy moment for them, and they'll have a lot of anxieties about what this might bring. But if we listen to the IDF is saying, don't evacuate. We're not going back in time. This is not the 7th of October for the north, when 60,000 Israelis had to leave their homes because there wasn't any certainty about the ability of Hezbollah to invade northern Lebanon, northern Israel, just like Hamas did to the western Negev. We're not there today. Throughout the whole of the past year, the IDF has been degrading Hezbollah's capabilities. Its position on the other side of the border has been for over a year in 5 positions strategically chosen to prevent Hezbollah from being able to approach the Israeli border. And the Radwan elite force, as well as all of the other Hezbollah arrays, the rocket arrays, the missile production arrays, the territorial units, have been under continuous daily IDF attacks. And so for that reason, the IDF is telling the northern communities, you do not have to evacuate. You simply follow the projectile warning alerts, just like everybody else in the country. Of course, you're closer to Hezbollah, so the risk is going to be bigger because there's less time to evacuate, and that's not easy. But other than that, they are being told to act like everybody else in the country. And I think that that's an important message. It's a reassuring message, and it's a reminder that we are not where we were 2 years ago, over 2 years ago. The north is already much safer, and it's going to be significantly safer, I believe, by the end of this operation in Lebanon going forward.
Gentlemen, stay with us. Much more to discuss on this very story. And to that exact point, let's check in with our correspondent, Joe Brown. He joins us from Tel Aviv. And Joe, tens of thousands of people would have raced to shelter yet again. Talk to us about what transpired there. What are people saying? Tell us more.
So I was walking through the streets trying to gauge the vibe here in Tel Aviv. Usually the streets would be absolutely packed. I've been here on this street in particular, Nahalat Binyamin, for the last 2 years around this time, because today is Purim, and usually there are street parties that go on throughout the day and last for a couple of days, and there were plans to have these this year. However, they were cancelled in accordance with the IDF's Home Front Command, who said that you cannot congregate outside of a shelter. Now, the people who were here, they were expecting, if there was going to be a missile, that there would be a roughly 5 to 10 minute warning, as has been the case with these missiles coming from Iran. However, if they are coming from Lebanon, you do not get that. You just get your 90-second warning. And where I was on Rothschild Boulevard in Tel Aviv, the people had barely actually moved. Nobody was rushing to a shelter. They were often nonchalantly either staying in the restaurants that they were able to get into. Most places here are actually closed right now. But some of them left trying to take videos to see if they could get any pictures of any interceptions. And that shows the resilience, if that is the word. You can call it resilience. You can also call it recklessness of the Israeli people in some senses. The majority of people will have gone to their shelters, though. The majority of people have been near a shelter, at home, or in some cases in light rail stations to protect themselves from an Iranian ballistic missile. But the people in Tel Aviv, they are trying to remain as resilient as possible. I've only seen a couple of people wearing Purim costumes. Most people have been just in the streets on their daily stroll, trying to get away from the madness of being cooped up inside for so long, trying to remain close to a shelter. But the streets that you would expect on any other day, not just Purim, any other day, to be bustling with people eating, drinking. Unfortunately, it's dead.
Highly unusual circumstances for a festival, but we appreciate the update. You stay safe. Correspondent Joe Brown, live from Tel Aviv. More to come from Joe in the coming hours. And now we turn our attention from developments in southern Lebanon and here in Israel to the latest out of Iran. We now welcome Len Khodorkovsky, the former senior advisor to the U.S. envoy to Iran, joining us from New Brunswick in New Jersey. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you being with us. We've been talking for the last while about the developments across the northern front now, just in the last few moments. But I'd like your sense more broadly, how you see this joint U.S.-Israeli operation so far, this precise and stunning result from the start on Saturday in Iran, the elimination of the supreme leader, more than 40 Iranian commanders eliminated as well, and intense strikes continue right now. Your take, your assessment, please.
Well, a lot has happened in just a few days, as you noted. Historic days and symbolic days, considering the Purim holiday. I do think that President Trump is probably the only person in the world who could have made this call and acted to unleash the American military in conjunction with the Israeli military to take out the world's most dangerous regime and to prevent it from getting the most dangerous weapons in the world and continue threatening both Israel, its neighbors, and the United States ultimately. So this is a historic operation. It's going to have profound impact for generations. And we can all pray for the safety of both the warfighters and the people on the ground and of course, the people around the region who have to scramble to shelters because of Iranian attacks.
It has been quite staggering to see the way the Iranian regime has responded, targeting so many Gulf nations. But I'd like your take on the U.S. leadership suggesting that the hardest hits are yet to come from the U.S. military. The president himself seems to think this could all take several weeks. Your thoughts on how long realistically it's going to take until this major operation, as you say, something that could change the whole trajectory of the Middle East, is going to take?
I think it's hard to predict how things go, especially when bullets start flying. So, a famous American philosopher, Mike Tyson, said, you can plan all you want until you step in a ring and get hit in the face. So I think, clearly the Americans and the Israelis have had excellent planning for this operation, immaculate intelligence, masterful follow through. I expect that this will continue. I think what they're going to do is layer by layer, take out all of the things that the president has discussed, which is the nuclear program, prevent the regime from ever being able to reconstruct it to threaten the United States and the region. They're going to target the ballistic missile capability. They're going to, target the Navy as they've done. So this is a layer by layer, meticulous dismantling of this monstrous regime that has been holding the world hostage for almost 50 years. And this kind of disciplined approach is probably the right thing to do. And I expect that we're going to get to a point when all of these layers have been taken care of and we're ready for a strong, stable transition to democracy in Iran, I hope.
Many across the region are hoping exactly that, but we wait to see how it all unfolds. It does look like there is a long road ahead. Len Khodorkovsky, always appreciate your insights. The former senior advisor to the U.S. envoy to Iran, speaking to us live from New Jersey. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Be well. And now we continue with our breaking news coverage. And senior Middle East correspondent Ariel Osseran, you have an update for us. What's the latest?
Well, we have the IRGC's Fars News denying that there was a meeting at the Assembly of Experts building in Qom to select the new supreme leader, saying that that will be announced in the next few days. Ultimately, this is earlier today, while reporting that Israeli officials told Israeli media that the targeting of that building occurred as all 88 experts were convening to select a new supreme leader. And so this would be a complete devastation to the core apparatus of the Islamic Republic. Now, Fars is denying this. Again, this doesn't necessarily mean that that is true, but they're saying that the meeting didn't happen and that in the coming days, they will announce a new supreme leader. Coinciding with that, we are hearing right now about reports of Israeli airstrikes in southern Lebanon, and that the Lebanese army is saying that it is going to ramp up security examinations towards in southern Lebanon. Anyone entering southern Lebanon will be checked, will be inspected, because what is happening now is really undermining all the effort that the Lebanese army, the Lebanese government has been trying to do over the past few months to disarm Hezbollah, to dismantle its capabilities. The Lebanese leadership announced with full pride just a month ago that southern Lebanon is completely under their operational control, except for the areas that are being held by Israel. But the events of today, yesterday, and the day before have proven that that is simply not the case. And for Lebanon, this is crucial, because if it is proven, and I think we're all seeing before our eyes, that they do not have operational control, that they have failed in disarming Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, this would push forward or delay or even cancel any plans by the international community to support Lebanon, to provide it with much needed funds. And so this, we've been saying for a while that this is a moment of truth for the Lebanese government with regard to the disarmament of Hezbollah. And now we are seeing not only that they have failed, but the massive extent of this failure.
Owen Altman, your thoughts?
Few points. First of all, if I'm not mistaken, there were 12 Hezbollah operatives who had weapons who were actually already arrested today at a checkpoint. So it shows, again, what Ariel is saying, how much that process is underway. In case we haven't yet mentioned it, the IDF coming out in the last half hour since the rocket fire from Lebanon and putting out an ultimatum, 24 hours for Iranian operatives in Lebanon to leave. If not, the IDF says there'll be no safe haven. There never was a safe haven for them. It seems to me that this might be targeted at public opinion in Lebanon, again, to try to show them and try to drive a wedge between the Iranians and the Lebanese and to play at that wedge that's already there. Also, reports out of Iran, coming through a Hebrew channel as well, that the process of electing the new supreme leader is well underway and is toward in its final stages, with an announcement to be made or a decision to be made soon. So even given the attack that was conducted today against the Assembly of Experts building, the Iranians saying it's full speed ahead in terms of choosing a new supreme leader and doing it quickly. They want to obviously show continuity and to show their own resilience. And finally, a report in Israeli media tonight that the assessment by Israeli authorities is that there has been a 70% reduction in missile fire from Iran, and that 50% of the missile launchers in western Iran and in Tehran have already been destroyed.
Your assessment on how long it is going to take to make sure that they don't have the capabilities to fire out of Iran. We know that they have been targeting those launches, and obviously when the launches are gone, it really doesn't matter how many actual missiles there are.
That's exactly right. That's at least true for the short term, for the duration of this war. Look, we had the Air Force intelligence chief saying quite recently that they're going to keep working until they get to the last launcher, the last radar, the last surface-to-air missile. But realistically, I don't think that they're going to get every single last one. What they need to do is to get a critical mass of these launchers, and they're well on the way to doing that. They've got the air superiority, they've got the intelligence, and now they're mostly hunting these mobile truck-launched missile launchers. These are mobile, they're hidden, they're camouflaged. Sometimes they're made to look like civilian trucks. We've seen footage of them being hit. And when you look at it from the air, you wouldn't even know that this is something that suddenly the roof can come off
of these trucks, and the missile is prepared for launch. So this is the main capability that is now being hunted by the Israeli Air Force. And I think we're seeing progress, as Owen just said, and we can see also a reduction overall in the intensity of the volleys. Sometimes the Iranians fire more and sometimes they fire less. But when you look at it as a continuum from day one of the war, there is clearly a reduction. And that's mostly because of the Israeli Air Force's achievements. And it's also because the Iranians themselves want to hold back on some of their fire so that they have enough to keep going for a while. So this is where we're at. I don't think that the Iranians can sustain this rate of fire for that much longer.
We certainly will be waiting to see how it all unfolds. As we said at the start of this broadcast, Israel is now fighting on two fronts at the same time.